When you think of anime, what comes to mind? Epic fights, maybe some fantastical worlds. But what if I told you it's also the secret blueprint behind some of your favorite Hollywood movies, that it completely changed how we tell stories and might even be shaping the technology of tomorrow? Okay, let's dive into the hidden and truly massive global influence of anime.
So to kick things off, let's play a little game. Think about some of Hollywood's biggest, most imaginative blockbusters. The films that just bend reality or build these incredible, unforgettable worlds. On the surface, they all seem totally original, right? Like they were born from the minds of these visionary directors. But a lot of them share a common, and for most people, a completely hidden ancestor.
And there it is, the reality-bending ideas, even some of the specific shots in The Matrix, well, they owe a massive debt to the 1995 cyberpunk thriller Ghost in the Shell. And what about the stunning city-folding visuals in Inception? You can see that DNA, clear as day, in the psychic destruction of Neo-Tokyo from the 1988 masterpiece Akira. And no, this isn't just a coincidence, it's a direct line of influence.
So today, we're going to trace that ripple effect. We'll start with how anime is basically hiding in plain sight in Hollywood. Then we'll look at how it rewrote the rules of storytelling, created a whole new kind of economic empire, became this incredible tool for cultural diplomacy, and finally, how it might just be inspiring the tech of our future.
All right, first up, hiding in Hollywood. This is where anime's influence is probably the easiest to see, once you know what you're looking for. It's all about how its visual language kind of became a global standard.
And this influence is incredibly specific. I'm talking about those sprawling, neon-drenched cyberpunk cityscapes that were pioneered in Akira. Hollywood totally adopted that dynamic, high-speed camera work that makes action scenes feel so visceral. But it wasn't just about the visuals. It was also about the deep, philosophical questions, about identity and consciousness from Ghost in the Shell that really gave films like The Matrix their intellectual core.
But maybe the most important impact was this. See, in the West, for the longest time, animation was pretty much just seen as family entertainment, for kids. Anime came along and just completely shattered that myth. It proved you could tell complex, mature, and really thought-provoking science fiction stories through animation, and in doing so, it created a whole new market for adult audiences.
So this visual influence then started to evolve, right? It went from what we see to how stories are actually told. And that brings us to anime's impact on what we could call the new narrative DNA of modern entertainment.
What this really means is that for an entire generation of writers and directors, their foundational storytelling grammar wasn't just classic Disney or old Hollywood films. It was anime. I mean, think of a show like Avatar: The Last Airbender. Yeah, it's an American production, but its structure, the character arcs, the action sequences, that's pure anime. The creators were just fluent in that language.
One of anime's most successful exports is this narrative formula we can call the growth loop, and it was pretty much perfected by shows like Dragon Ball Z. You know this one, right? A character trains, awakens some new power, faces an impossibly strong enemy, probably gets defeated, and then has to push past their limits to win. This cycle has become a global template for long-running series, from TV shows to video games.
Okay, let's pivot from the creative side to the commercial. Because anime didn't just export stories, it exported a revolutionary business model. A model we can call the Pokemon economy.
The engine behind this whole economy is a strategy called media mix. Now, the idea is simple, but it is so powerful. So instead of the Western model, where maybe a movie is a hit and then you make some merchandise as an afterthought, media makes plans for everything right from the start. You create one piece of intellectual property and you expand it across every possible medium. Games, comics, TV shows, merchandise, and each part systematically promotes all the others. And there is no better case study on Earth than Pokemon. It didn't start with the show. It started with the video games, Red and Blue. That created the foundation. Then came the anime, which gave the characters personality and a story, and that massively expanded the audience. And this, of course, fueled a merchandising empire and cultivated a global fandom that continues to power one of the biggest franchises on the planet.
So, this economic power naturally leads into our next section, anime as a form of cultural diplomacy. It has become, without a doubt, Japan's ultimate soft power.
And the evidence is just everywhere. You've got Spirited Away winning an Oscar, introducing Studio Ghibli to a massive global audience. Characters like Totoro have become these cultural icons recognized all over the world. The whole culture of cosplay, dressing up as your favorite character, that is a global phenomenon born from anime fandom.
It even drives tourism, with fans making what they call holy site pilgrimages to the real-life locations that inspired their favorite shows.
This all highlights a really powerful reality. For much of the last 50 years or so, Japan has established its international presence and its influence not through military might, but by exporting stories, and anime was the primary vehicle for that.
Okay, so we've covered film, storytelling, business, and culture, but this final piece of the puzzle is the most forward-looking and, frankly, it's the most mind-bending. So let's talk about how anime might actually be inspiring the technology of tomorrow.
Now let's be clear, anime isn't providing literal engineering blueprints. Instead, what it does is act as a cultural catalyst. It gives scientists and engineers a shared vision, a common vocabulary, and the motivation to try and turn science fiction into science fact. It asks, what if, in such a compelling way that it inspires people to go out and find the how.
It's a pattern you see again and again. Look at Ghost in the Shell. Back in 1995, it was imagining this future of brain-computer interfaces, which today, that very vision inspires researchers at places like Neuralink.
Or how about Den no Coil from 2007? It explored this world of just ubiquitous augmented reality, years before the tech went mainstream. It basically gave designers a case study for the social implications.
And take this series, Patlabor. It was so unique because it wasn't about flashy space battles. It was about the mundane reality of integrating giant robots into society. Regulations, maintenance, accidents. And today, engineers actually use that to think through real-world logistical challenges.
I mean, this cultural groundwork goes all the way back to the 1950s with Astro Boy, which pretty much kicked off the mainstream conversation on robot ethics that we are literally still having today.
So when you add it all up, the structural impact is just undeniable. Across the board, from the visual language of our movies, to the very structure of our stories, to the shape of global culture, anime's influence is absolutely massive, and it's measurable. And what that means, ultimately, is that we need to stop thinking of anime as just another genre. It is so much more than that. It's a foundational language, a way of seeing and telling stories that has shaped a whole generation of artists, writers, and even scientists.
And that leaves us with a final and pretty fascinating question to think about. If the science fiction visions from the anime of the 80s and 90s are influencing the real-world technology that we see emerging today, what are the wild ideas in the anime being made right now inspiring for the world of, say, 2040 and beyond?